And I know
I'm Michael Ray Dresser, and you're listening to Thought-Provoking Talk on Dresser After Dark. And each night we'll bring you the best and the brightest authors and experts with solutions, the topics you want to hear, and the people who know to bring them to you. So let's do it together. Let's get to the heart of the issues that face us every day, right here, right now on Dresser After Dark, coast to coast, and around the world on the BBS Radio Network.
I have had a love of my own, and I know how it feels to have wings on your heels and to fly down the street in a trance. You wing down that street on the chance that you'll meet, and you meet, not by chance. Don't cry, young lovers, whatever you do. Say don't cry because I'm alone. All of my memories are happy.
Wayne Brown is with us. He's the author of Alone in My Universe, Struggling with an Orphan Disease in an Unsympathetic World. And for Wayne Brown, the symptoms started when he was a very young man. His jaw hurt one day, and it hurt at day, it hurt at night, and he couldn't explain why. And that was just the first of many painful signs that Wayne was growing at an alarming rate. And in 2004, he was diagnosed with a pituitary gland problem that causes, it's called giantism. And let's say, Wayne, hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here with you.
Oh, and thank you so much for being here. It must have been a shock to you to find yourself starting to grow. How old were you at the time this started to happen?
Well, Michael, when I first started to notice the growth, I was around 24 years old, and my father was very sick with brain cancer. So that was really what was obsessing our entire family, was really taking care of him and his needs.
Sure.
And I remember complaining about, the aches and pains, but so many of them were explained away by the symptoms of the stress of dealing with an ill parent.
Now, by the way, when we talk about the symptoms, yes, some pain and then jaw pain, etc. But what about the growth? When did you begin to take a look in the mirror one day and realize you were bigger?
Well, that was part of the problem, because we were dealing with the symptoms from my father. I was having a lot of bad food, and we were keeping horrible hours, and so the growth was largely attributed at the time to poor diet, because I was eating just horribly unhealthy foods, and we just didn't stop to notice the sheer volume of food I was eating. I remember at the time I could gorge on what would be 2 people's meals, and then an hour and a half later I'm starving again. And it was really, food became my all-consuming obsession, but because we had this huge cloud hanging over our heads, it was very easy to get distracted.
No.
For most patients with this disease, it actually takes, on average, about 10 years from the onset of symptoms to diagnosis.
No, wait, when we talk about giantism, you're talking about eating a tremendous amount of food. Normally, when someone thinks giant, they think tall, but I'm hearing something different.
You know what?
Yeah.
We do get the giantism symptoms that are more associated with height in people who start to have these symptoms onset during the pubescent period.
Yeah.
That's where you get the people who become very tall, who become extraordinary in height, like some of the basketball athletes that have had this disease. With a lot of people who have the disease onset after they go through that pubescent growth period, the growth is really internal, and the way I was describing it the other day to someone was, it's kind of like having a plastic garbage bag and you just keep trying to shove more and more into it, where yes, it will expand to compensate, but the outer lining is going to keep wearing out, which is where a lot of us suffer tremendous joint pain.
No, okay.
At my maximum, when I was first diagnosed, I was 340 pounds, and now I'm down to about 220 or 225.
No, but what about your height? Did it affect your height at all?
Not so much. I mean, I'm taller than what the average person would be considered. I'm about 6'3".
Yeah.
We have a lot of members who are extremely taller than I am, but we have a great number of members who are extremely shorter than I am, And as far as height alone, that is not something that you could identify most of our members by, because many of them are of average or shorter than average stature. That's just one of many symptoms that are associated with acromegaly.
Yeah, see, I want to go back to where I was early on when we talked about giantism. Not necessarily the first picture that one would get in their mind would be height, but it's not height. 300 and some odd pounds is a very big man. Now, when I was starting this out and talking about what happened to you, I said giantism. I couldn't pronounce the actual name of the disease. How do you pronounce that?
That's no problem. That's actually very typical, Michael. The pronunciation is acromegaly. And actually, when I was first diagnosed with the disease, I went home and I tried to do some research on the disease, and I had such a difficult time remembering the disease that when I tried to look it up online, I couldn't even find the definition. When I tried to put it into Google, Google didn't even come close to coming up with what I could have possibly meant.
Now, by the way, one of the things that I think is critically important,
universe, because quite honestly, people who do suffer with this disease do have that loneliness, because so many people don't realize about the disease, including many of us who are diagnosed with it.
Now, by the way, one of the most important things that I have found over the years in all of the different interviews with somebody who's had some kind of a disability, a disease, or whatever the case may be, was that they felt alone, because when they were alone with it, they couldn't explain it to anybody, and they got embarrassed, and for the most part, emotionally and physically, they hid. Now, what you've done with this, and I think it's a phenomenal idea, you've created the acromegaly. Did I say it right? Acromegaly?
Very close. Acromegaly, yes.
Oh, acromegaly. Okay, you've created the acromegaly community, and that's a .com. And I think that's extremely important, because when somebody gets something like this that is not average, that's not normal, when they go to the doctor's office, nobody even knows what it is that's causing it. It needs other people there for support.
You're absolutely right, and actually you hit into something that's very essential, Michael. One of the things that I've noticed about this book is I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people who have read the book. Some are family members, and some are people who are dealing with other medical issues, like you said. And every person who's read the book, and I'm talking with backgrounds in every single disease, some people even including addiction disease, have come to me and said, wow, this book really spoke to me personally. And when the family members or the loved ones come back after reading the book, initially some of them get a bit uneasy, saying, well, this person wasn't alone. They had me, they had my wife, my child, this person, that person. So they weren't alone. And when they go and they read the book, they say, oh, okay, I understand, because this book is actually a tribute to our loved ones and how much we love and appreciate all the good deeds they did. But at the end of the day, there is that loneliness, there is that disconnect, because we end up having to walk that path totally by ourselves. And that's why I created the community, so that way people can talk to each other and share their experiences and share their laughs sometimes, and frequently share their tears.
And the biggest problem, and I'm going to take this to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've had a tremendous amount of people over the years who've been on the air with me with this, and it usually somebody gets, when they hit bottom, they finally go for help. But what they find is the people that are there to help have, quote unquote, Wayne, been there, done that. It's not academic. It doesn't come out of a book. It is people who have had the problem, truly relate, not understand doesn't work, that truly relate and recognize what it is that you're going through. That in and of itself is it's a staple, because without that, you're in trouble. Somebody can talk to you all day long of what they've learned out of a book, but unless they're living that, it doesn't mean a whole lot.
That is such an essential part of really working with someone who has that extraordinary loneliness, is the fact that they can relate on an interpersonal level. One of the things that I've been saying since we first started the groups, and we just started out with a couple of social networking pages on MySpace, which begot Facebook, which eventually begot the website and the charitable organization as a whole, the one thing I've always maintained is that the people who are at their strongest, I always ask them to pay it forward and help out those who aren't currently at their strongest. Because there's going to be a day where they're not feeling so great and they're going to appreciate the hand up. One of the things that I really loved, I was a huge Tim Russert fan when he was alive.
Yeah.
And one of the comments that he made that truly rang strong with me was the quote that he said, that the greatest exercise you can give a heart is to reach down and help up your fellow man.
Sure. I mean, there's no question about that.
That's exactly what we try to do.
There is no question about that. Let me ask you this. We're running out of time. The real question here basically is this. I got a couple of minutes to go, but I want to make sure that we get all of this in. How do I access the information? How do I get into the online? How do I find the groups that could help me if I had this problem?
Well, we have a number of ways to get in. Number one, we have the website, which is acromegalycommunity.com. I'll spell that for you. It's ACRO, M as in Mary, EGALY, community.com. We also have a Facebook page, which would be facebook.com/alone.book. And if they want to, they can call my office directly, and I'll be more than happy to speak with anyone about any concern. And that phone number is 716-844-8780.
Now, by the way, Wayne,
I'm happy to talk to anyone. That's one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that our organization is built upon the kindness of others.
now let me ask you this question. Let's say, for instance, that I know somebody, which I don't, but I know somebody who is, I'm starting to see the symptoms of this. I'm starting to see them overeat, and it's not just weight, and there are certain symptoms. Is there any place we can go to the web and do an FAQ of frequently asked questions somewhere to find out? Because if the person themselves may not know, if somebody is aware enough, then they can spot this and get right down to the core of the problem.
Absolutely. We actually, if you go to acromegalycommunity.com, we have a whole list of symptoms that are associated with acromegaly. And just to go over some of them, it includes some of the more common ones, and some of the more obvious ones, for lack of a better word, are enlarged hands and feet, where people will actually see their hands and feet grow. At the maximum, my shoes were 16 double E.
Wow.
And now that I've been in treatment, I've been very lucky, and my feet and hands have actually shrunk, and my shoe is down to, depending on the cut, a 12 or a 13. So it was very exciting to me when I could actually buy my shoes in stores again. My gloves shrank from a size 7X down to an extra large.
Wow.
Some of the other features of the disease include facial changes, where people develop a tremendous underbite and an enlarged forehead. The severe joint pain that we described earlier. People can also suffer excessive sweating, headaches, colon polyps. And this is one of the reasons why people do suffer for so long, is because there are so many incongruent symptoms that unless you have a medical doctor who's trained in what this disease is or has exposure to it previously, it's nearly impossible to diagnose. Now, if people do go to our website, not only do we have information on the signs and symptoms of acromegaly, we also have information, and this is good for anyone, information on drug financial for people who need help with prescriptions. We have information on stretching for people who have joint pain issues. Our blog, our networking, all that is totally free. Becoming a member of Acromegaly Community is totally free for anyone who wants to join. That's one thing that I was very passionate about when we were creating this organization, is that money should never be a barrier to support.
Wonderful. Wayne, we're out of time.